George Galloway, the MP for Bethnal Green and Bow, had wanted to be able to speak at tonight's meeting, but he's not been able to make it. But I'm very pleased that he has been able to send in his place his parliamentary officer, Kevin Ogden. So, Kevin.
Thanks, John. Thank you. I'm also standing in for the speaker who was going to be here, which is Abdul Mir, the leader of the Respect group of councillors, but he has to be at an important council meeting. There's nothing about the whip holding him back, but he's at the meeting on lettings policy, which is probably also known as trying to put a quart into a pint pot, given the amount of resources we have and services we have in Tower Hamlets. Public services, which if this goes through, will be diminished even further, and that's the first point that I wanted to make. But John outlined the particularities around this privatisation, which are absolutely outrageous. I mean, I do know something about the law of contracts and procurement, and there's no doubt that this is illegal under European law. There's a case in the Financial Times only 2 days ago regarding sums considerably greater, but certainly over the threshold of €137,000, where that contract has now had to be scrapped precisely because it's not gone through the procurement process. So there are these technical reasons, at the very least, why this shouldn't go through, but there's an overwhelming reason as well. I am somebody, and so is the Respect group, who are ideologically opposed to the privatisation of our services, particularly the education service, which is about educating children how not to make waste, going to a company whose business is fleecing councils up and down the country by overcharging for the refuse collection service, and in very many cases doing it badly. So at the very least, there's a conflict of interest. And it's the first of many cases, I think, around privatisation, given that there's a new consensus, apparently, at least a consensus amongst the establishment parties, that we need to go down the road of cuts to public spending and the privatisation of services. If not frontline services, then what they call secondary services, which I guess is what Phil's would be described as. I don't think that preventing environmental damage and waste is a secondary service. I think it's something which is primary and has to be defended as such. And there's a further reason as well, which John touched on, the nature of Veolia as a company, which already has contracts with the council, and is now, if this goes through, to be given the best part of £250,000 for providing a service which is being provided perfectly adequately and to award-winning standard for far less than that by Phil himself. And that is the various aspects of the reputation of Veolia. I'll just mention one which John touched on, which is that it was only under considerable international pressure in this country, in France and elsewhere in Europe, that Veolia was forced to pull out of a contract to build the Jerusalem Light Railway project, which sounds as if it's something that might be rather friendly. Everybody's in favour of the light railway project. You know, the Docklands Railway could be a lot better, but certainly it's more environmentally friendly than roads and so on, except that this project is about linking illegal Israeli settlements around Jerusalem and therefore further confiscating Palestinian land. And I mention that because it was susceptible to pressure, and I think we should have some confidence, given the overwhelming power of Phil's case, that we can win this campaign. Another point is over the issue of homophobia. This council, a few months ago, produced what was actually a very good poster. I don't know if people don't often take in posters, but they were up at very many bus stops. I think the overall budget was something like £30,000 or £40,000. It was a good poster, which said, Tower Hamlets Council, supported by other organisations, no place for homophobia in Tower Hamlets. No wiggle room there, absolutely clear, and very, very good that that was out there as official council policy throughout the borough. Well, if it's good enough to put posters up around Tower Hamlets, it's certainly good enough not to brush aside serious complaints about homophobia which have been made by Phil. And on those grounds alone, the fact that the council is even considering forcibly transferring somebody who has outstanding grievances over hatred, over homophobia, is absolutely unacceptable. And I think it's unacceptable, and people will find it unacceptable amongst all sections of the community inside Tower Hamlets. The case, I think, can be won. I mean, hopefully it doesn't have to get to the legal stage, because usually by then the transfer's gone through and so on. And I know Phil's got some more news about further technicalities which ought to stop themselves, which themselves ought to stop this, ought to stop this transfer. But I do think that the size of this meeting, which is very, very encouraging, should lead us to believe that we can keep Phil in the council, keep him in the public sector and not privatised. On a personal note, I have to say that even if I didn't know the details of the case, even if John hadn't outlined them so very, very clearly, just knowing Phil over the past 16, 17 years and everything he's done for this community means that I take his word over any of the council officers. And I think you do too, and that's why we should support him.